Yo, what's going on, guys? It's J-Mass, and I'm back again with another dope New England adventure. I want you to take a look at this map right here. This is a map of every town and city in all 6 New England states. Everything colored in red is a town or city I have physically been to, while everything in yellow is a town or city I have not yet visited. As you can clearly see, I've covered quite a bit of New England throughout my many years of traveling across this region. The only sections of New England I'm really missing are the very rural, remote, and hard-to-reach parts, including much of northern Maine, as well as a few glaring islands and overlooked suburbs. Having traveled throughout much of New England, I'll be offering my thoughts in this video. For each New England state, I'll be covering my favorite and least favorite towns, as well as my favorite and least favorite cities. Towns and cities can be starkly different, so they deserve different categories. For each of these towns and cities, I'll give a brief summary on my thoughts, feelings, and opinions. Now, I do have some personal criteria on how I review a town or city. For me, a town or city that has a lot to see and do, or one with a rich history or culture on display, or even one with fantastic cuisine and food options, will always be far more favorable than a boring town or city with nothing going on, regardless of elements like how quiet or safe it is. There are quite a few New England cities I thoroughly enjoy that often get unfavorably disregarded by other people. I would much rather spend time in a rougher city with a lot to offer, see, and do, versus a boring suburb with not much going on. Anyways, let's get started, cycling through each New England state in alphabetical order as I cover my favorite and least favorite towns and cities. I expect quite a bit of disagreement, as these are my personal subjective opinions, so I'd love to hear your own favorites and least favorites in the comments below. My favorite town in Connecticut is Old Saybrook, a quaint seaside town located near the center of the state's southern coastline. In many ways, Old Saybrook is a quintessential New England coastal community with much to see and do. The town is defined by its picturesque sandy beaches along the shimmering coastline, including Harvey's Beach and Knollwood Beach, and the quaint villages scattered throughout the town. Old Saybrook Center is home to many lovely shops, bars, and restaurants, including some excellent seafood. There are also several landmarks that define the town's history and culture. This includes 2 historic lighthouses, Saybrook Breakwater Light and Lind Point Light, as well as Fort Saybrook Monument Park, which includes the fascinating Connecticut Valley Railroad Roundhouse and Turntable site, and many preserved colonial homes. Old Saybrook is also home to some excellent natural destinations, including the many forested hiking trails of the preserve, to the swampy salt marshes of Ragged Rock Creek Marsh Wildlife Area and Plum Bank Marsh Wildlife Area. Old Saybrook is also notable for being situated at the mouth of the Connecticut River, the longest river in New England, and the ship-lined marinas along the riverfront further add to the town's charm. This town truly is a gem along Connecticut's coastline. Unfortunately, the designation for my least favorite town in Connecticut has to go to East Hartford, a suburb directly east of the capital city of Hartford, as the name implies. In many ways, East Hartford symbolizes the worst of commercial suburbanism in America. Most of the town is defined by artificial and isolated post-war suburban neighborhoods with scant green space, while the remainder is marked by heavy commercialism and industry, topped off with massive open parking lots and warehouses. The aerospace manufacturer Pratt & Whitney effectively dominates the town, with their campus consuming a massive chunk of land and doubling as even more parking lot spaces. The twisting, winding mess of I-84 and Connecticut Route 15 converging into the town from neighboring Hartford also leaves a mess of traffic and pollution, and this major navigational sector ultimately leads to a section of town defined by national restaurant chains and innumerable hotels. Frankly, East Hartford has no character, and stands for everything I despise about poor urban planning and suburbanization. There is no history or culture on display, since all of that can be found in the capital city next door, In fact, arguably the best thing to do in East Hartford is to visit the riverfront along the Connecticut River and gaze at the skyline across from you. And even then, there are much better vantage points to see the skyline in Hartford itself. I guess if you like reliance on cars, parking lots, segregated housing, and national chains, then this is the place for you. When it comes to my favorite city in Connecticut, I have to choose New Haven, situated along the southern coastline. Despite the rougher reputation it's gained within the last few decades, New Haven still stands as a historical and cultural capital of Connecticut, and there is so much I love about this city and what it has to offer. Right off the bat, I would be remiss if I didn't discuss the city's thriving food scene. Not only are there numerous outstanding eateries scattered across the city, but New Haven-style pizza might just be the best pizza in the country, even rivaling New York City. New Haven pizzeria staples like Frank Pepe, Sally's, and Modern are must-try local joints, and they really are worth the hype. Aside from food, there is so much history on display here. Yale University is perhaps one of the most beautiful college campuses in the country, with exquisite architecture. A favorite of mine is the iconic Harkness Tower. Yale is also home to the renowned Yale University Art Gallery, possessing centuries worth of rich human culture and some genuinely famous artwork. In terms of natural destinations, New Haven does not disappoint, with the gorgeous Lighthouse Point Park offering scenic views of the Long Island Sound, as well as the historic 5 Mile Point Light. Just north of this park, beautiful sandy beaches cascade along the coastline, before ending at the historic archaeological sites of Fort Nathan Hale and Black Rock Fort. For hiking, I could not recommend West Rock Ridge State Park enough, offering great wooded trails that lead to stellar views of the city and the glistening ocean beyond it. Of course, the city has a stunning skyline with some truly intricate architecture, which can be viewed at its best from this ridge, as well as the center of the pretty New Haven Green. New Haven, despite its faults, is a juggernaut city that offers much in the way of scenic natural beauty, outstanding food, ornate architecture, and rich history and culture on display. On the flip side, I have to give the designation of my least favorite city in Connecticut to nearby Bridgeport, which I think lacks everything that makes New Haven special and worthwhile. Despite being the largest city in the state by city limit population, Bridgeport seriously falls short of the history, culture, and beauty of the former city, yet still suffers from the same rough reputation to an even worse and more damaging degree. I really hate to be so judgmental, but simply put, Bridgeport is truly one of the most ugly major cities here in New England, if not the ugliest. It's ironic that the city's skyline is dominated by an abandoned industrial smokestack, symbolizing decades of pollution, directly across from Bridgeport Center, which I'd honestly label one of the saddest excuses for a city's defining tower. Downtown Bridgeport is unceremoniously choked and strangled by the convergence of I-95 and Connecticut Route 8, ruining any sense of vibrancy and life the downtown sector could have. And don't even get me started on the lack of walkability here. This city is dominated by car reliance and parking lots, and truly favors industry over urban planning and comfortable livability. Now listen, I'll admit that the city's coastline is not half bad, especially the landscaped and manicured beauty of Seaside Park and historic Fairweather Island Light to the west. But Seaside Beach itself is probably one of the dirtiest beaches in the state, and there's really no reason to ever choose that beach over other nearby options in neighboring towns and cities. Ironically, Pleasure Beach Park is one of the most famous beaches in the city, which was just recently closed this summer for severe tick infestations and is primarily dominated by decaying abandoned ruins and buildings of a former amusement park. If that doesn't serve as a symbol for the city's natural destinations, then I don't know what does. Bridgeport is a city defined by its deteriorating industrial mills, factories, and power plants, many of which have not been renovated or refurbished, sitting derelict and untouched. The city emanates a frankly depressing aura despite its genuinely large size, and it really saddens me just how much potential it has that is not being utilized. I also have to mention that the city's major historical note is being the home of P.T. Barnum, one of the most bigoted and evil people in American history. Not necessarily a great selling point. My favorite town in Maine is York, a beautiful coastal town nestled in the southwest corner of the state. York basically has everything you could possibly want out of a Maine experience, all jam-packed into one single town. There are several stunning beaches along the coast, including York Harbor Beach and Long Sands Beach, as well as the quaint seaside villages that run alongside them with shops and restaurants. The seafood in York is top-notch, and it's easy to find a buttery lobster roll or savory clam chowder in town. Of course, you have Cape Nettic Lighthouse, aka Nubble Lighthouse, perhaps one of the most iconic lighthouses not just here in New England, but in the whole country. If you love hiking, there's Mount Agamenticus further north, offering stellar views of the town and the ocean, with some great trails stretching into the woods. And I can't forget about Stonewall Kitchen, which is actually headquartered here. The company store always has free samples of their amazing products. Shout out to their mango lime salsa, by the way. York truly is the quintessential Maine town. It has beautiful beaches, scenic nature, delicious seafood, quaint villages, and a rich local history on display. Choosing my least favorite town in Maine was quite difficult, to be honest, but sadly, I had to go with East Millinocket. Frankly, it's a bit of a depressing town located in a generally beautiful and interesting region of the state. In many ways, East Millinocket is a town you stop at when you're getting off I-95 for gas or food. It's one of the last population centers for several miles, whether you're heading north or south. Unlike its more dynamic neighbors, Millinocket and Medway, I just find East Millinocket to symbolize the dullness of life in the quiet, northern reaches of Maine. The town's entire riverfront along the West Branch Penobscot River is dotted with industrial mills and quarries, rendering any recreational activities impossible. And despite being just a stone's throw away from Baxter State Park, there really isn't much in the way of hiking or nature. While I'm sure the people of East Millinocket are great, I just find the town uninspiring, uninteresting, and a bit run down, especially given its general geographic location. My favorite city in Maine is hands down Portland, the state's largest city, located along its southern coast. I know, it's a basic pick, but it's the truth. Portland is such a fun city with some of the best restaurants, bars, taverns, and eateries in all of New England. While I personally don't drink, the local bar scene here is excellent, with dozens of local brews and drinks on tap. There are also dozens of excellent seafood restaurants scattered throughout the city, particularly along Commercial Street. Grab some fried whole belly clams or calamari at any of these joints, and I guarantee you'll be satisfied. Portland's Old Port and waterfront neighborhoods are truly a must-see for any tourist visiting the city, with stunning brick architecture, fun shops, and walkable streets with quite a bit to see. I'm absolutely a fan of the city's history, which can be found on nearly every corner, from Fort Allen Park's many memorials and monuments in the East End, to the Portland Museum of Art and Victoria Mansion closer to the West End. However, I think Portland's most unique asset are its many islands in the Casco Bay, most of which can be accessed by public ferry. You can spend hours exploring these islands, which boast quaint lighthouses, abandoned military forts, hiking trails, and stunning sandy beaches. There is so much to see or do in the city, and there's a reason it's one of New England's greatest tourist destinations. Unfortunately, the designation of my least favorite city in Maine goes to Sanford, which is also located in the southern region of Maine. Unlike the nearby town of York, which I praised earlier, Sanford just simply lacks much of what I love about Maine. It's a dull and slightly depressing former industrial town, with no ocean access and very few nature destinations. Frankly, I just don't find the city's main center all that interesting, with the slight exception of maybe Gateway Park. There is really not much to do or see other than old mill buildings decaying in the distance, and most of the restaurants in the city are national chains like Applebee's or KFC or Pizza Hut. Without being too judgmental, I just can't deny that the city seems pretty dead and run down, and there's not much reason to go there unless you're driving through US Route 202 or stopping at the Sanford Seacoast Regional Airport for some reason. It just strikes me as more of a place to live rather than a place to visit, with little to offer. This was a difficult choice to make since there are so many towns that could have made my number one spot, but ultimately, my favorite town in Massachusetts is Great Barrington, situated near the southwest corner of the state. Great Barrington encapsulates everything I love about the Berkshires region of Massachusetts. It's a quiet, quaint, and serene town packed with history, culture, and nature. Downtown Great Barrington offers some truly stunning brick and stone architecture, with dozens of local shops and restaurants along Main Street. The food scene in this town truly punches above its weight. Great Barrington is home to one of my favorite restaurants in the country, the Bistro Box, which never disappoints with its farm-fresh eats. There are also nice cafes and patisseries throughout the town, owing to its peaceful, laid-back attitude. In terms of its rich history, Great Barrington excels at putting it on display, from the artistic and indigenous history at Monument Mountain to W.E.B. Du Bois' boyhood home site, a personal hero of mine. Furthermore, the town is home to some scenic nature. There are dozens of hiking trails to choose from, ranging from the aforementioned Monument Mountain, which offers stellar views of the surrounding region, to East Mountain State Forest, which is actually connected to the well-traveled Appalachian Trail. The mighty Housatonic River itself has a nice river walk running alongside it, with informational plaques detailing its importance to local history. Great Barrington is an underrated town that perfectly represents my love for the Berkshires. My least favorite town in Massachusetts has to be Leyden, located along the northwestern border with Vermont. While this is by no means a bad town at all, it is supremely boring and uninteresting. In fact, I'd go as far as to call it one of the most boring towns I've visited in New England. Nearly all of this tiny rural town, which only has a population of 734 people, is private farmland with nothing to see or do. No shops or restaurants or landmarks or any historical or cultural sites. Even the natural sites leave much to be desired. While it is an admittedly beautiful town in some parts, with some rolling hills and mountains both in and around it, Leyden really does not have many distinct hiking destinations, other than maybe the Leyden Wildlife Management Area. As stated previously, most of the town is farmland or private property, and it essentially exists as a secluded rural outpost with nothing to offer to outside visitors. Again, Leyden is by no means an awful town, but even some of the rougher towns in Massachusetts have far more to see and do than this one does. I sometimes even forget I've been here since it's so unmemorable. Alright, was it even a question? My favorite city in Massachusetts is Boston, the capital and largest city in the state. I mean, you guys saw this coming from a mile away, right? Not only is Boston my favorite Massachusetts city, but it's my favorite city, period. I don't even know where to begin on how I can express my love for this fantastic monument to human civilization. So to avoid myself rambling on and on, I'll try to keep this entry brief. Boston is hands down the historical and cultural hub of New England, and that's what I love most about this phenomenal city. Its history. No other city in the United States preserves and displays its history as well as Boston does, both the good and the bad. There is so much American history on clear display here, particularly during the colonial era and the American Revolution, which can be seen at sites like Paul Revere's house, Faneuil Hall, the Old State House, Fort Independence, the Bunker Hill Monument, the USS Constitution, and much, much more. Each neighborhood in Boston feels distinct and plays an important role in the development of the city. The North End is a dense brick neighborhood with a strong Italian heritage, while the Back Bay is famous for its brownstones and upscale shopping and restaurants. And then you have Dorchester with its diverse immigrant population and strong sense of community. Boston is also home to an array of incredible museums, like the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum, the Boston Tea Party Museum, and fine art institutions like the Museum of Fine Arts and the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. And of course, this is a city of firsts with some landmark mainstays that define the city and the country. Boston Common is the oldest city park in the US, and the MBTA is the oldest subway system in the US. Don't even get me started on the food. It's out of this world and severely underrated. The North End has some of the best Italian food in the country, and the city at large is home to some diverse ethnic options thanks to its rich cultural diversity. I've had excellent cuisine from all over the world in this city, and Boston really needs more recognition for its standout food scene. The city is walkable and easy to navigate thanks to its public infrastructure. And, of course, the Boston skyline is iconic, whether you're gazing at it from the many bridges spanning the Charles River, or from the Harbor Walk in the seaport. I really could go on, and I've barely scratched the surface on why I love Boston so much. Someday I'll do the city the justice it deserves with a 6-hour-long video or something. On the flip side, my least favorite city in Massachusetts is Palmer. A city like Palmer lacks everything that makes your average Massachusetts town or city special. The city is very uninteresting, and the downtown section feels quite depressed and run down, with not too much going on. There's virtually no history or culture on display, and it leaves you wondering exactly what Palmer's defining characteristic is, other than being a glorified rest stop while you're driving along the Mass Turnpike. Palmer's status as the smallest city by population in the state is emblematic of its overall insignificance within such a dominating roster of juggernaut cities. While I will admit that there are some nice hiking options like the Palmer Wildlife Management Area, it really is no match for other surrounding nature destinations. I mean, the Quabbin Reservoir is just north of the city and has so much more in the realm of outdoor recreation. Again, while I'm sure the people of Palmer are nice and friendly, this is just such a frankly boring and uninteresting city, especially for its region, that just doesn't warrant much more than a quick stop to check it off your list. It almost stands as a relic of a city that is far past its prime and experiencing current-day struggles. My favorite town in New Hampshire has to be Lincoln, the gateway to the beautiful White Mountains. In many ways, Lincoln is an outdoor lover's dream destination, and you could truly spend weeks exploring all the natural sights it has to offer. A massive chunk of the town is remote, mountainous wilderness, with hundreds of hiking trails, including the famed Appalachian Trail, and several stunning mountains with breathtaking panoramic views. I honestly don't even know where to start with this one. A couple heavy hitter summits in Lincoln are Mount Bond, Mount Hancock, Mount Kerrigan, Mount Liberty, and Mount Flume, all of which are serviced by scenic wooded trails that often teeter on the edge of soaring peaks. Much of this land is included in the Pemigewasset Wilderness, a massive wilderness area purely dedicated to natural conservation and preservation and outdoor recreation. Aside from the hardcore mountain hiking, Lincoln has a variety of more accessible outdoor destinations, including the scenic beauty of Flume Gorge, a steep, narrow forested gorge marked with cascading waterfalls and boardwalks. Just north of that, Franconia Notch State Park offers several trailheads that delve deep into the mountains, a few of which also lead to waterfalls. Famously, Lincoln also serves as the western end of the scenic Kankamangas Highway, including several notable stops within the town like Otter Rocks, the Hancock Overlook, and the Pemigewasset Overlook. I also can't forget about the town of Lincoln itself, which has a variety of fun local shops and restaurants, as well as some seasonal, family-friendly destinations like Clark's Bears in the summer and Loon Mountain for skiing in the winter. In fact, while I don't personally ski, Lincoln transforms into a major skiing resort town in the winter. Overall, if you love the mountains and the outdoors, Lincoln is absolutely worth a visit. My least favorite town in New Hampshire is Hooksett, a suburb just north of the state's largest city, Manchester. Despite New Hampshire's reputation as a scenic and beautiful natural destination, with stunning views in nearly every town, Hooksett is a rare exception. Aside from a small corner of Bear Brook State Park, since most of it is in neighboring Allenstown and Deerfield anyways, Hooksett really does not have much in the way of outdoor recreation. A bulk of the town is defined by commercialism and industrialism, with numerous sand, stone, and gravel quarries scattered throughout. Much of Hooksett is shopping centers, parking lots, and national chains, and there really appears to be no local identity outside of being a suburb of Manchester. In fact, the town's most defining characteristic is hosting the Hooksett Welcome Center's service plazas along I-93, which I guarantee you is the average New Englander's interaction with this town. Frankly, there's just not much to do here other than spend money at chains or drive through to a better destination. I genuinely argue every single town and city that borders Hooksett has much more going on than this town does. I guess if you like industrial quarries and mining operations, Hooksett might be for you. Hands down, my favorite city in New Hampshire is Portsmouth, situated along the eastern corner of the state, bordering Maine. Portsmouth is a vibrant, historic port city defined by its stunning downtown sector, flooded with amazing local shops and eateries. When I think of what a standout New England seaside city should look like, Portsmouth really does come to mind. Although it technically does not border the Atlantic Ocean, the city is situated along the mouth of the Piscataqua River and offers some stunning waterfront views and vistas, especially from coastal parks like Prescott Park, Fortree Island, and Bohinco Gateway Park. Downtown Portsmouth itself is truly a gem, with dozens of shops, cafes, and restaurants to choose from. Being within minutes of the coast, this includes some incredible seafood options. I especially enjoy the distinctive brick colonial architecture that is on display downtown, and the iconic North Church is a famous landmark towering over the city with an ornate white steeple. This city is packed with history and culture on display, including the Strawberry Bank Museum, an outdoor history museum preserving early colonial settlements, and the USS Albacore, a decommissioned submarine from the 1950s that can now be visited and explored at the namesake Albacore Park. There are also several historical burying grounds scattered throughout the city, with some fascinating graves. Nature lovers and hikers will also enjoy the New Hampshire Seacoast Greenway, a rail trail which stretches throughout the forested western end of the city. Overall, Portsmouth is a picturesque port city that shows what a coastal New England settlement truly can be at its best. This was a tough choice to make, but sadly, I'd have to say that my least favorite city in New Hampshire is Rochester. Now, I want to state that Rochester is by no means a terrible city. It's a good place to live. And in fact, I almost gave this slot to the city of Berlin, New Hampshire instead, which is a decaying former industrial center. But the city limits of Berlin include so much mountainous natural beauty and some truly fantastic outdoor recreational activities, especially hiking. Rochester completely lacks that edge over Berlin. Instead, it's an incredibly boring and uninteresting city with not a whole lot going on other than commercial chain shopping. And as I've stated many times throughout this video, I find the worst sin a city can commit is being truly boring and cultureless. All it takes is a single glance at Rochester's satellite view on Google Maps to see that the city is defined and dominated by highways, chains, suburbs, and golf courses. A good place to live? Sure. A good place to visit? I mean, what are you gonna do? The city lacks any notable or distinct natural destinations, or at least nothing that surrounding towns and cities also don't have, but better. With the exception of a few cool colonial buildings, Rochester is ultimately one giant car-reliant suburb, a place to get your shopping done. I want to bring up the comparison to Berlin one last time to really drive this point home. Despite being a dying industrial city at its core, Berlin is home to some world-class hiking and stunning natural beauty within its very own city limits. It's a naturally breathtaking place. Rochester has Rochester Common. And if you know anything about New England towns and cities, it's that every New England town and city has a common. My favorite town in Rhode Island is Jamestown, an island town situated in the middle of Narragansett Bay. And in a state filled with incredible coastal towns, standing out as my number one pick is a major feat. Jamestown is a calm, quiet, and scenic seaside community with miles of beachfront coastline. Pick any corner of the town, and I guarantee you'll come across either an incredible beach or expansive ocean views, or both. One of my favorite vistas is on the eastern shore along Connecticut Avenue, where you can gaze across the bay at the iconic Claiborne Pell Bridge in the nearby city of Newport. This beach is also directly across from the town center, with a variety of quaint local shops and restaurants, with some incredible lobster rolls and other seafood available at most. However, aside from the coastal charm, what I love most about Jamestown is its historical sites, many of which are embedded within outdoor recreational activities like hiking and boating. Fort Wetherill State Park is a personal favorite of mine, a massive abandoned coastal fortification complex with several decommissioned batteries to explore, all right along the scenic coastline. Although significantly smaller, Fort Getty Park is another abandoned fort complex along the coast, with more historic batteries to visit. Just south is Beavertail State Park, home to the iconic Beavertail Lighthouse at the very tip of Jamestown's southern point. There are also even more old batteries to visit here. Dutch Island is also part of Jamestown, a small island off the western coast, home to the abandoned remnants of Fort Greble and the Dutch Island Lighthouse, accessible by kayak, canoe, or any other boat. Of course, one of the most famous historical sites in Jamestown is actually further inland. The Jamestown Windmill, located in the Windmill Hill Historic District, is a peek into the town's 18th century agricultural history. I could go on, but Jamestown encapsulates everything I love about Rhode Island, rich in history, cuisine, nature, and stunning seaside views. Choosing my least favorite Rhode Island town was a much more difficult task, as I really don't dislike any town in the state, mostly by default since it's so small. Ultimately, I had to go with West Warwick, southwest of the capital city of Providence. Once again, West Warwick is a suburban town dominated by commercial shopping, and the extent of its outdoor activities is limited to manicured golf courses, baseball parks, and a single riverwalk. This is just another pretty uninteresting and unmemorable town with not much going on, rife with national chains and dense suburban neighborhoods. Unless you're driving along I-95 and need a quick gas stop, there's not much reason you'd stop here. West Warwick is also incredibly small by area, so this town is already limited by size on what it has to offer. The only standout attraction I can think of in this town is the Station Fire Memorial Park, a haunting memorial to a tragic nightclub fire. It's a very sobering experience and worth a quick stop if you're nearby. Otherwise, West Warwick is yet another frankly boring suburban town with not a whole lot going on. I mean, the name itself is a giveaway, West Warwick. Why visit this cheap attempt at imitation when you can visit the much more interesting and engaging Warwick next door? Alright, I'm sure you guys knew this was coming, but my favorite city in Rhode Island is the capital and largest city, Providence, without a doubt. Not only is Providence my favorite city in the state, but it's also my second favorite city in New England after Boston. I'd argue that Providence is one of the most underrated and overlooked cities in the country, as it has so much to offer despite its small size. There is so much I could say about this city, but once again, I'll try to keep this brief. Much like Boston, Providence is dominated by gorgeous architecture, ranging from brick colonial buildings found scattered throughout the city to Art Deco masterpieces like the iconic Superman building, towering over the cityscape and dominating the skyline. Truly, downtown Providence has a lot of great architecture to witness, as this district stands as something of a time capsule of previous eras in design. However, when it comes to the city's rich culture, I'd argue some of the best spots for that are its many neighborhoods surrounding downtown. Federal Hill is a dense neighborhood renowned for its incredible Italian food. In fact, it's one of the most authentic Italian neighborhoods in New England. College Hill is a hip, trendy neighborhood home to lively Thayer Street, filled with shops and restaurants, and the beautiful campus of Brown University. In fact, Brown itself is one of the country's prettiest campuses, with brick colonial houses and buildings surrounding the main green. The food scene in Providence is honestly amazing, one of the best I've personally experienced. Thanks to the city's ethnic diversity and immigration, so much excellent ethnic cuisine can be found here, from Latin eats to Asian delicacies, and, of course, the aforementioned authentic Italian of Federal Hill. Seafood is also a staple in the city, thanks to its proximity to the Narragansett Bay. Many of the best restaurants can be found in the city's trendy suburban corridors, and I guarantee there is something for everyone. Bars, taverns, and clubs also shape the city's overlooked nightlife scene. However, my personal favorite aspect of Providence is its rich history on display. Where do I even begin? The Roger Williams National Memorial is a look back into the city's early colonial history, primarily relating to its founder, Roger Williams, one of American history's most underappreciated characters. The John Brown House offers a look into the city's darker history, as it was once owned by a prolific slave trader. Of course, fans of literature will appreciate paying a visit to H.P. Lovecraft's grave in Swan Point Cemetery, as well as many buildings that appear in his work. In fact, Providence has so many fascinating historic buildings, from the Rhode Island State House, to the First Baptist Church in America, to the next-door Fleur de Lis Studios. For family-friendly fun, there are a myriad of sites and museums to visit, including the Roger Williams Park Zoo, the Museum of Natural History and Planetarium, and the Roger Williams Park Botanical Center, all within walking distance. And, of course, the beauty of the Providence skyline can be admired from many vantage points, especially my favorite, Prospect Terrace. Honestly, I could go on, but Providence is an incredible city that deserves far more love than it gets. When it comes to my least favorite city in Rhode Island, unfortunately, I have to go with Woonsocket, up north along the border with Massachusetts. Woonsocket lacks nearly everything that makes Providence stand out. I hate to be judgmental, but being frank here, it's just such a depressing city, dominated by its former industrial sector that now sits in decay and disrepair. Walking around the city for just a few minutes will let you see how run down this place has become, which is a shame, because I know that many former mill cities in New England have rebounded dramatically. Now I will admit, the best thing Woonsocket has going for it is its cuisine and culture. It's a very ethnically diverse city with a phenomenal food scene. There is especially some great Latin food here to try. However, outside of the food and rich diversity, Woonsocket just truly lacks much else to do, save for maybe looking at some admittedly gorgeous architecture, which has since succumbed to decay and deterioration. Again, I hate to be judgmental, but it's just a bit of a sad city with a lot of socio-economic problems. I'd love to see more of its rich industrial history on display, rather than sitting idle and decaying. I'd also love to see some more room for outdoor recreation, like a proper river walk along the Blackstone River. To me, Woonsocket is an example of a city that has a lot of promise and potential, but nothing is being done to seize that opportunity. I hate to put it as my least favorite city since I'm the type of guy to give former industrial mill cities a chance, but Woonsocket just doesn't do it for me. It just makes me sad and disappointed. In fact, it's most notable for being the headquarters of CVS Pharmacy. And that's really about it. I'll let you decide how that makes you feel. Choosing my favorite town in Vermont was very difficult, but ultimately, I'd have to go with Bennington, nestled near the southwestern corner of the state, bordering New York. Bennington is a town which truly encapsulates everything I love about Vermont. Quaint, small-town charm with rich history, local shopping, and beautiful natural scenery. Downtown Bennington is one of the most quintessential Vermont town centers there is, composed of brick buildings offering various local shops, restaurants, cafes, and inns. One thing I love about Vermont is their emphasis on buying local goods and foods, and Bennington is no exception, as many of these shops and eateries serve local products. However, my favorite neighborhood in the town is Old Bennington, featuring an unmistakable colonial aesthetic, with a plethora of old yet beautiful buildings along scenic, tree-laden roads. Bennington is one of the most historically rich towns in Vermont, and much of this history is on display. By far the best sight to see in town is the towering Bennington Battle Monument, a 306-foot-tall stone obelisk commemorating the 1777 Battle of Bennington. The top observation deck of the monument offers sweeping panoramic views of the region, and you can see the states of Vermont, New York, and Massachusetts from it. Nearby, the excellent Bennington Museum details the town's rich history further, featuring artwork, relics, and other local memorabilia. I also can't forget about the Park McCullough Historic Governor's Mansion in North Bennington, and the now derelict Woonsocket Inn in Old Bennington, which once hosted 4 U.S. presidents and legislation that led to Vermont's statehood in 1791. Of course, Bennington has a wide variety of natural beauty to explore, particularly in its rolling hills and mountains. This includes wooded trails that lead to the summit of Mount Anthony, the tallest mountain in the town, as well as the Bennington Municipal Forest, with a network of hiking trails along a hilly slope. Of course, I can't forget the many historic covered bridges in town, like the Henry Covered Bridge and the Silk Road Covered Bridge. Overall, Bennington is a must-see small-town destination in the state. Likewise, choosing my least favorite town in Vermont was difficult, since even some of the smallest, obscure towns in the state have extensive outdoor recreation to offer. However, my pick is the town of Rutland, not to be confused with the city of Rutland. To be clear, the town of Rutland entirely surrounds the city of Rutland, but is its own standalone municipality. This is important to understand for the purposes of this ranking, because the town of Rutland lacks everything that makes the city of Rutland interesting, engaging, and distinctive. The city of Rutland has excellent shops, restaurants, and historical sites, with a fascinating downtown sector marked by gorgeous brick architecture. The town of Rutland has private farms, private suburbs, and the runoff of a few national chains that didn't quite make it into the city. You can argue that the town of Rutland being my least favorite town is a bit of an odd technicality, and I guess it is, but realistically speaking, you're never going to spend time in the town when everything to do is in the city or even in neighboring towns. The quote-unquote shops and restaurants of the town of Rutland include Hannaford, Harbor Freight, Dick's Sporting Goods, Denny's, and Taco Bell. Oh, and there's also a massive abandoned mall on a hill nearby. Meanwhile, most of the hiking and outdoor activities can be found in nearby towns like Mendon, West Rutland, and Clarendon. Basically, the town of Rutland is just a suburb of the city it surrounds. A great place to live, I'm sure, but not much to see or do as a tourist. It's a drive-through town at most to get to the more interesting enclave within its borders. My favorite city in Vermont has to be Burlington, the state's largest city, located along the eastern shore of Lake Champlain. I absolutely love Burlington. It's a small city, yes, but packed with so much to see and do. First off, the city's Lake Champlain waterfront is one of the best waterfronts in New England. There I said it. There are so many marinas, wharfs, parks, and general green space open to the public, with beautiful beaches offering stellar views of the mountainous horizon across the glistening lake. A few favorites of mine include Oakledge Park, with its long, sandy beach and mysterious Burlington Earth Clock, and the massive waterfront park, connected by the Island Line Rail Trail directly below the steep slopes of downtown. In the lake across from the park, you have the iconic twin lighthouse set along the Burlington Breakwater, which includes the north and the south lighthouses. When talking about Burlington, of course, we must discuss its lively downtown sector. Home to a plethora of incredible local shops, cafes, restaurants, and more, downtown Burlington is by far the business hub of Vermont. Church Street is a bustling pedestrian-only street sneaking through the heart of downtown, dominated by high-end shops and delicious local restaurants. Nearby, City Hall Park is another major downtown center, where there always seems to be something going on. Just west along the waterfront, families can enjoy the Echo Leahy Center for Lake Champlain, featuring a variety of lake creatures like fish and turtles, and a marina with many ferries and boats ready to take you around the lake on a scenic cruise. Of course, like most of the state, Burlington is home to excellent local eats, particularly Lake Champlain Chocolates, which hosts its headquarters and flagship store in the city's south end. I also can't forget to give a quick shout out to the greatest attraction in the entire city, the world's tallest filing cabinet, which is located nearby. Burlington has lots of rich history and culture on display, particularly surrounding the mythos of Ethan Allen, one of the state's main founders as well as an early settler of Burlington. The Ethan Allen Homestead Museum and Historic Site is an excellent historic site that covers the story of Ethan Allen's early settlement in Burlington, where he lived and worked, having been built in 1787. Greenmount Cemetery is home to Ethan Allen's grave, which stands as an ornate stone obelisk topped off with a statue. There's also Ethan Allen Park, a hilly forested park featuring Ethan Allen Tower at its highest point, offering sweeping views of the city and Lake Champlain. Speaking of which, the city has quite a bit of hiking to offer, from the trails of Ethan Allen Park itself to other forested parks like the waterfront Rock Point Loop and the interior Centennial Woods. Despite its small size, Burlington is a charming, scenic city with quite a lot to do, and a personal favorite of mine here in New England. Vermont only has 10 total cities, and they're all quite nice, which means choosing my least favorite city is a difficult task. By default, because of the lack of options, my least favorite city is Vergennes, located a few miles east of Lake Champlain. Now, Vergennes is by no means a bad city, but it is by far the smallest city in the state, and admittedly has very little to do. Downtown Vergennes is pretty small, charming, and quaint, but aside from a few local shops and eateries, it's mostly a drive-through city. Much of the city limits are defined by private farms and suburban neighborhoods, and although there are a few pretty outdoor spaces, most of these are in the form of small parks or scenic vistas along Otter Creek. Again, I want to clarify that Vergennes is a nice city, and this pick is mostly by default, but it lands as my least favorite spot due to the small size simply not allowing visitors much to see or do. The defining landmark of the city is Vergennes Falls, a series of small industrial mills and rushing waterfalls cascading down into the creek. It's pretty, but not necessarily worth the drive, and nothing I haven't seen elsewhere. Vergennes is worth a quick visit if you're driving through the area, but otherwise, don't expect to spend more than an hour in the city. It's tiny and pretty nondescript. Still a nice city though, and if Vermont had a worse choice for me to pick, I would not have willingly picked Vergennes. Hey, thank you guys for joining me. I've been J-Mass as always, and this has been another dope New England adventure. And those were my favorite and least favorite towns and cities in all 6 New England states. Do you agree or disagree with any of my picks? What would your picks be for each state? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, this video is running quite long, so I'll keep this outro brief. Subscribe to the channel for more New England related content, and follow me on Instagram at JMassOfficial to see what else I'm doing. Also, quick shout out to all my channel members. Thank you all so much for supporting me and the channel directly, I truly appreciate it. But yeah, that's about it. I'm intrigued to see how controversial this video becomes.